Do you expect most players who want a freehold to be able to get one, or will they be prestige symbols owned by a small fraction of players?
That is a very good question. I think the answer is that if a player wants to achieve a freehold, they can achieve the freehold. However, the amount of effort, resources, and time that's required in order to achieve that freehold is a large amount. It is something that is a monumental achievement for you to get that freehold. And the reason why is because freeholds tie in very heavily to the processing artisanship aspect. Some processing can be done in nodes, but the best processing is done on freeholds. And we want to make sure that there's a little bit of a throttle or gate on the amount of effort that's necessary to achieve that influence over the processing market. And that means that it takes some time to achieve it. So ultimately, to answer that question, anybody who puts the effort in should be able to achieve a freehold, but it is going to be a major achievement for that character. And by the way, I just want to make sure we're clear that a freehold is one of 3 types of houses, right, that you can own. So just because the freehold is very difficult to attain doesn't mean that you don't have a space for housing and furniture that you can achieve through our apartment system or an inn or the static in-node housing. Those are alternate methods as well, but they do not have that aspect of the best processing is done there. The best processing is done on the freehold.
All right, guys, it's Jahlon, and today I want to talk about that clip you just heard about freeholds. I didn't do this last week because last week was the big combat update, and I wanted to let the dust settle on that. If you didn't see my video on the combat update, that's up there in the upper right-hand corner. Make sure you check that out because they are sort of demonstrating how basic melee attacks are going to work. But for today, I want to talk about the potential homelessness problem in Ashes, and will player housing be available to everyone? Now, if you've played MMORPGs in the past, you know that MMORPG housing is always sort of hit or miss. It's not like any game ever gets it perfect. And to talk about a couple of big games that have influenced Intrepid or the market, we had ArcAge, and anybody that played ArcAge knows that you had the big land rush. Land got acquired and gobbled up really quickly, and then you had land barons, people that would hold on to a lot of different property and not utilize it. Now, Intrepid has addressed that particular problem. When it comes to freeholds, your account can only have one freehold. This isn't one freehold per character or one freehold per server. You may only have one freehold on your entire account. So for that regard, they are addressing the land baron problem. If you take a game like Final Fantasy XIV, even now they're still having a problem getting housing to everybody. Even though their housing is instanced, they don't want to create a bunch of extra instances, so they've been doing a lotto system, but that hasn't really worked well because there are still free companies that can't get a house. There's still individual players who can't get a house, so much so that they are adding an individual island for everybody to have a little place to call their own. So in these games, you can see the struggle to get any housing. Now, if you remember, Jahlon launched, and for they had a very limited amount of open world housing, but what they did is they made instanced housing available for everybody. The problem with the instanced housing in Jahlon is that there is a difference of people being able to visit your open world house, help prune your trees, grow your garden, all sorts of different things they could spend AP on that benefits you. So although housing was available, it was very different. Now, in Ashes of Creation, we know that there's going to be 3 types of housing. At least until last week, we knew that we were going to have in-node housing, we were going to have instanced apartments, and we were going to have freeholds. And we always assumed that in-node housing was going to be the rarest because we know in a stage 3 node, there are only 8 houses, which that's going to set a limit to the overall available housing. Now, I do want to note that every time that node levels up, more in-node housing becomes available, but it is still going to be very limited. Now, during that clip, we heard Steven talk about a 4th type, and he mentioned inns. But then he very specifically said 3 types of housing. So we knew inns were going to be something that could be put on freeholds, but we didn't know what they were going to be. And now we get the additional knowledge drop. So hopefully we get clarification on ins soon, maybe next month. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Probably be a good little thing to clarify. Now, with that said, this is where my homelessness concern comes in. If you remember, in Ashes of Creation, you must own housing in order to be a citizen. It doesn't matter which type of housing you own, but you must own a housing form to be a citizen. You must be a citizen to be an elected official in the node's government. So if housing starts at node stage 3, there's 103 nodes. And let's just say 25% of the nodes will be stage 3 in a few days after launch, because a few days is the amount of time it takes a node to go from stage 0 to stage 3. Now, if you're confused about nodes, in the upper right-hand corner, that's the start of the nodes playlist, or you can check out ashes101.com in the description, and you can get all caught up on nodes. So if 25% of the nodes will be stage 3 in a couple of days, that means they're going to have 8 houses in a stage 3 node. A apartment is available for stage 3 nodes with only 50 apartments in it. Now, at stage 4, a mayor can build an apartment building that has a soft cap limit of apartments. The only limit to it is the price. With that said, you're going to have 58 citizens per stage 3 node, plus freehold owners. So that means at launch, if 26 of those nodes, 25% of the nodes, 26, are stage 3, that's going to be 1,508 citizens. And that's going to be 10% of the player base on a server, because although there is a 10,000 player concurrent number, there's 15,000 people assigned to a server at launch. Now, let's say that it's not 25%. Let's just run the numbers if it's 50%. So all the same numbers, and as we run down, we get 50 nodes at stage 3 times 58. That's going to be 2,900 citizens, and that's going to be 19% of the players on a server at launch. So really, that's my concern number 1. I think that this is going to cause a little bit of problem. I understand that exclusivity is a driving design pillar for Steven Intrepid Studios on the Ashes of Creation project, but I think limiting the early choices, the early direction of those nodes on a server to 10 to 19% of a population, 58 people per node, plus whoever can achieve this monumental achievement, I think that's a problem. Now, I also have to talk about concern number 2, and this is going to be what people call, a hot take. I do want to talk about this because it has to do with the cosmetic shop, has to do with the cosmetic cash shop skins. I've recently done a video on the cosmetic cash shop. That's in the upper right-hand corner if you want to check that one out. Every month they sell a $25 cosmetic skin. And I'm not against this. Before anybody jumps up and down on me, I love the idea that they're funding their project in development with no pay to win cosmetic skins. And so I have no problem with the fact they're selling them. I am against some issues with the Freehold cosmetic skins, but definitely I don't want to derail this video. That's a whole different video topic or a whole different discussion over on my YouTube or on my Twitch. I'm sorry, I Twitch stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. My problem with this here is something you buy with real world money that requires a monumental accomplishment has really rubbed some people the wrong way because they haven't really detailed what that monumental accomplishment is going to look like. Nor does the cash shop have a disclaimer on it that says you may not be able to use this item. Now, I know Steven said in his quote, players are going to be able to achieve it if they dedicate to it. I just don't think that this is one of those areas we want to be left in the dark. We want to shine some light on this. We want to have some clarity. They talk about transparent development. This is a place we need to shine some light and get some transparency. Now, this brings me to a couple of questions. This is my feedback in a video format. Steven talked about gatekeeping or throttling the Freehold development. In a previous video, we were told that the best crafting is inside nodes, and this makes absolute sense. The best crafting stations will be inside nodes. The best crafting stations will be inside scientific nodes, and then the absolute best crafting stations will be inside stage 6 metropolis scientific nodes. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think it works out really well. I think it also makes a lot of sense that the best processing is on freeholds. Most MMORPGs do not have a processing artisan tree. Normally you have gatherers and you have crafters. Gatherers go out and get the raw materials, they get the ore, they get the logs. They bring those to a crafter. The crafter does the first stage crafting and they turn it into an ingot or a plank. That's the processing piece of it. And then they turn around and they either turn those into materials like bolts and screws, or they turn around and they make a final product with it, armor, sword, shield, whatever have you. I am not against having the best processing on the freeholds. I think it's a great idea. What I do have a question is, what about all the other functions of the freehold? What about the people that only want to have farms? What about the people who only want to have stables? What about the people who only want to have a tavern, an inn, and a shrine? What about all the people who just want to acquire a freehold so that they can be a citizen, so that they can get involved with the government, or they can have a vote, because you can't vote if you're not a citizen? I think there's a lot of functions of a freehold that are going to be gate kept under the idea that we got to gatekeep it for the processing part. So my question is, does this require freeholds to be throttled, or is it possible to throttle the processing part? Previously, Steven and then Jeff, when he was the lead game designer, they talked about how there's going to be leveling up of the buildings on your freehold. So the longer your tavern is in existence, your tavern will level up. It will grow vertically. It can't grow horizontally because freeholds have a half-acre footprint, but they'll grow vertically. Different services will become available. Well, if that's how it's going to be with taverns, why can't it be that way with the processing? In order to unlock the higher level processing, then your processing stations have to be used more. You have to go out and find one of those higher level schematics. They've talked about legendary schematics for freeholds. So really, is this the best way? And that's really my big question. Is gatekeeping or throttling the acquisition of the freehold itself the best way to do this? Or is it possible to throttle just the processing part and make the freeholds available? Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people who immediately respond to this video and they're going to say, you're making wild assumptions, you don't have enough data, let Intrepid iterate and then comment on it later on down the road. You are perfectly entitled to be of that opinion. I'm of a different opinion. I'm of the opinion that you can see a concern early on. The earlier you point something out, the more likely it is that the developer can pivot and say, oh yeah, we didn't think about that. Maybe Intrepid goes down that list of questions and they're like, yep, Jay said this, we've thought about all that. Then maybe they share some of that with us and they say, okay, we definitely see your concern. We definitely see you have questions. Here's some answers. Here's some direction. Here's some vision. Or maybe somebody sits down with those numbers and they're like, those numbers can't be right. And they rerun the numbers and they're like, oh, we really are going to be limiting the early governments to 10 to 19% of the population. We didn't think about that. That's not going to be received well. Maybe we need to change that. That's the thing about feedback. It's never too early to give it, because the sooner you give it, the sooner the developer can do something about it. With that said, speaking of feedback, please, there's a comment section. Go ahead, leave a comment on the video. If you want to ask a question here. I'll do my best to answer it. If I can't answer it really well, I'll direct you to a source, or I'll talk about your question on my Ashes 101 live stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. If you liked the background music you heard today, down there in the corner, you see, looks a lot like me. I have a record label. It's called PGN Music. It has a YouTube channel, very slowly growing to 1,000 subscribers. Until it's at 1,000 subscribers, we don't get paid. If we don't get paid, we can't use that money to make more music. Until then, guys, I will see you when I'm live on Twitch, or make sure to subscribe to the channel. I have 5 or 6 videos coming out on different topics people have asked me to do. I will see you next time when we have something to talk about.